be seated. Our Old Testament lesson from Jeremiah, which starts off this series here that leads to the cross and to the forgiveness of the thief, goes back to about 1,000 years before Christ, with King David, he mentions. Jeremiah is writing about 600 years before Christ, just after the Babylonian captivity, and all of the people were gathered, or a lot of them, and taken off to Babylon, and they stayed there 48 years. Others left and went to Egypt and some other places to stay away from the occupation of what was Jerusalem and Judah and Israel, to stay away from the occupation of Nebuchadnezzar and his band of thieves. Tore down the temple, destroyed everything, and took over the land. So he's pretty upset with the kings that let this happen. He's upset with the current shepherds of the flock, the kings of Israel. In the early part of the history of Israel, in the early part of the New Testament, when Moses brought the people out of Egypt through the Exodus and into the Holy Land, they didn't have kings. They were a theocracy. God was the king, and the people then had shepherds, leaders that took care of those other things. But as time went on, they were complaining because all of the countries around them had kings, and we want to be like the others. We don't want to be left out. We want a king too. So they got a king. And it went on and on for a while. But David was the greatest of the kings, who brought the people all back together, united the kingdoms, and ruled with equity, I gather, and with prosperity for everyone. So David was the idea, and the root of David, the line of David, would be the coming king in the later times. No king right now when they come back from exile. But they long for a king that could be the good shepherd for them. Somebody who would be the shepherd king like David. Somebody who would be the king that would have God in and through him. There's always a man, you know, the glass ceiling had not been broken yet, and never has been in Israel. But that God would be in this new king, this coming king, in the whole idea that since Israel kept getting overtaken by all kinds of countries throughout their history after this, not only the Babylonians, but everybody else, and now even in the New Testament times under Rome, they still looked for and longed for this Messiah, this person who would be the leader, the king that God appoints, the shepherd of the people, the one who would destroy the enemy and rule with equity. That's what they wanted. That's what they were waiting for. And it was from these early stories that the New Testament ideas came into being when Jesus was born and lived out this ideal. Went around healing people, teaching, working with all, the women, the children, the poor, the outcasts, the sick, the lepers, the tax collectors, everybody. He was there with them. Not so much with the upper class, though some of them followed him too. But mostly, he went against what the rulers wanted. He went against, especially when they were under Roman occupation, against what the Sanhedrin, the ruling class, wanted to keep the peace with the Romans. No, don't disrupt it. Don't change it. Don't let anything happen. Don't let anything change. And of course, Jesus wouldn't stop at changing everything and of criticizing and telling everybody and telling them what he thought of them. And they didn't like it. And so they put him to trial. They tried to trap him along the way. And finally, they put him to trial, sent him to Pilate, back and forth. Pilate had a chance to let him go. Pilate could have, but Pilate didn't want to upset the status quo either. And he sent them off to be crucified. Now our gospel story starts there, where he's on the cross now with two other thieves, one on either side. And you can imagine the soldiers there, they had they had gambled over his clothing. The ones that brought him to the cross would get, or the people that they crucified, would get to divide up what they had, their cloak and coat and all that. And so they gambling at the foot of the cross. Some of the followers were off in the distance weeping, mostly women. And a lot of the crowd and the soldiers deriding Jesus and taunting him, and because he was a criminal. But on the top of his cross, there was a sign that said, "This is the King of the Jews." And he had to carry that with him, supposedly, when he carried the cross. He carried this sign around town as he was marched outside to the hill of the skull. It was called Golgotha, but not until about the 4th or 5th century. So nobody knows where it was, but it's outside the walls, outside the gate. And he's on the cross. And people don't die, they sometimes will die of asphyxiation, I think, but most of the time they had a support to keep them up there so that they would die of exposure. No water, no food, and sometimes it took a long, long time and a painful death before they died. The giving of the sponge with the sour wine is an interesting thing, because some people would give them something to help reduce the pain and perhaps to prolong the agony so that they have more of a spectacle for a longer time. It was a Roman thing to do, and they crucified hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes along the roads, sometimes outside the town, never, of course, in the cities. The crucifixion was the way the Romans wanted to show no insurrection here, no being against the Romans. Now, the Jews could have stoned him. That was allowed, but not kill him by crucifixion. They wanted to pass it back. They didn't want to have their hands. They want to pick up rocks and throw them. Maybe they didn't have good aim or something, but maybe they just didn't want that on their hands. Let it be on Pilate's hands. Let it be on the mob. Just get him out of the way. But while he's on the cross, one of the thieves here is saying, if you were the Messiah, why save yourself and us? Come down from the cross, save us. And the other one says, knock it off. We both getting what we deserve. We both have done wrong and we're paying the price. But this man, Jesus, is without sin. This man, Jesus, has not done any of that. He doesn't deserve to die. And he turns to Jesus and he has those wonderful words, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Now, that's what makes this a gospel today instead of just the stories of doom. But it is the good news. Today you will be with me in paradise. He says to the thief, who is not baptized, has not been coming to church and taking communion, has not been making confession every Sunday, but just opening himself to Jesus, and he is accepted and loved and brought with Jesus to paradise. Paradise is an interesting idea. It's a Persian walled garden. And if you go to paradise, you need to be taken in there by whoever owns the garden. And he is coming, you'll be with me today in paradise, Jesus said. In paradise, he will take him into that, whatever heaven is about, whatever happens after we die. We don't really die, do we? We just change from one life to another, we believe. We believe all of this stuff. We believe that it's important to forgive. It's important for you to, for us each to search ourselves and find out what we have done or what we have left undone, and how we have contributed to the corporate malaise or chaos of the world, or what we have done on the other side to help correct that, to help bring some semblance out of that, to bring that, you know, as chaos and chaos theory continues to work out, it always turns into a strange attractor. It changes into these beautiful motifs if you run it out on a graph, or if you look at a fern, the way every little leaf or frond is the same all the way up and down, and how that expands. That's what chaos turns into. There's always something great about it in the end. We can go into chaos and get lost. We can go through chaos and come out at the other side into something wonderful, like a garden with a wall around it, like a garden with our Lord in it. Something beyond us that we don't know, don't understand, and only have hints of it from the story we hear in the gospel, from the life of Jesus. Forgiving ourselves and forgiving anybody else around us, everybody else, even our enemy, to love them, that is, to forgive them and wish for them the very best. Wish for them the same as you wish for yourself, the same as you would wish for your neighbor or for your spouse or for your children. You wish for them happiness. You wish for them not to be caught up in the chaos, but to become caught up in love that fills and washes clean everything that you've done, everything that you've been, and every place that you're pulled away from somebody else or something else. It brings you together and makes you one. Children of God, children of the Most High. And if we don't do that, if we keep anger and hatred between us and somebody, we don't even have to be near them or anything else. They could be on the other side of the country. If we keep that anger and hatred, then that locks them up, and it locks us up too in that. We're both in a jail of sorts. We're all both prisoners of that hate. Forgiveness is not just to build up the company or even to make amends and be friends with that person that's hurt you or angered you or is opposite of what you believe. It's for you, yourself. It's for your relationship with God, for your soul. Forgiveness, and that's why we have this confessional church. We have confession every Sunday. We have that so that all of those things, known and unknown, we can say, we don't want them, we want them clean. We want to be free. We want to be out of this prison of hate and anger, of guilt. No blame is a saying that the ancient Chinese have in the I Ching. No blame. What you do, what you've done, has to be made right, but there's no blame that you've done it. There's no blame. You're already free to change, free to confess, free to make right, free to love one another. How do you love one another? Pray for them if it's hard to do. Talk to somebody. Talk to God. Pray for that person. Pray for yourself. Pray for the world. Talk to God. God's right there. God's within you. The kingdom is within us. We're already there, but we still have to talk to someone. Talk to a counselor, talk to a priest, talk to a friend, talk to somebody that you trust, if you need to. But often, just in your own meditation, in your own prayer, you can come through the agony, the torture that you lie awake at night wrestling with. Wrestle with angels, I often say. It's like Jacob's dream, where he dreams that he's wrestling with somebody all night long. And in the morning he finds that he's been wrestling with God. And he limps away from that as a changed person. He has been pretty much of a scoundrel up until then, but now he's changed. We too, if we've been a scoundrel up to then, and some people probably think we are, because they're so different from us. Just like when they're so different from us, we think there may be something wrong with them. No one is to blame. Everyone is a child of God. Everyone needs to confess. Everyone needs to be absolved and made whole and be with Christ in paradise.